Hello and welcome to the Joanne Groves Show with, coincidentally, Joanne Groves and our friend Doug Miller. Hi, my name is Robert Cappuccio, and today we're going to talk about being burnt out on burnout. Hello, welcome to the show, Doug. Joe.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Bobby.
So before we hit the record button, I was on several rants, one around the baby carrot situation. We might circle back and touch upon that later. Hopefully we won't. But we were also talking about being burnt out on burnout. And for the past couple of years, there's an increasing narrative around burnout. It's a very important issue, and it seems to be dominating the conversation on most forums. And burnout's one of those things where it's quite complex. There's a broad scope and depth of influences that contribute to burnout. But what are some of the antidotes is what I think we're here to talk about. We understand that there are many causes and there are many strategies, and stepping back and renewal and recovery and taking a break is part of that. But what happens when it's time to re-engage and get back down to business, so to speak? What do you do when performance is still non-negotiable? Joe, what are your thoughts? Because we've talked about this quite a lot.
I think it is a huge topic. And I think that if anybody is listening or works with teams where they suspect anybody is suffering with burnout, I think it's really important to escalate that at pace, because if somebody is disengaged, cynicism and, self-harming, depression, that needs medical support and help. And so that would be a big thing to make sure that, we're not qualified to deal with that. So refer out. But if we're talking about how do we identify early symptoms that could lead to burnout to help prevent it in the workplace, and some of the things that, as you said, could be an antidote to it. Some of the things I think is, how do we bring autonomy back for the person who's experiencing those burnout symptoms to feel like they're part of it? So autonomy, and I think as well, expectation. Because have you ever been in the situation when you think you're doing a really good job and someone keeps telling you you're doing an awful job, because there's some sort of disparity between what is expected as a good job, and what isn't. So having clear ideas of what success looks like on both parts of the equation, because if we know what success looks like, then it's easier to achieve it, and we're not constantly trying to sort of analyze or work out where we're hitting that mark. So I think autonomy, matching our expectations, are huge for me.
I want to unpack a lot of what you said, because yes, it's almost like when I was learning how to be a personal trainer way back in the 1940s. And we started off with, well, what does an ideal movement pattern look like? There's no such thing as an ideal movement pattern. No two people are going to move the same way. But if you have that, then you can deconstruct, okay, what do you want to have happen? Knowledge of performance versus what's actually happening, knowledge of results. I think that's really important. If there's a couple of things you said that for me really land, because one, what are the symptoms of burnout?
Mhm.
So if you're someone who is typically a baseline positive, happy person, and you start developing irritability and you start to become curmudgeonous, like for me, like curmudgeonous should be my middle name, but it's Joseph. But for somebody else, if that's not a consistent character trait, but you start exhibiting it, things that you usually are excited about, you're developing cynicism. All of these things, coupled with mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion, could be a sign that you are either moving toward burnout, or you might be experiencing the early stages of burnout itself. But you talk about autonomy, and that's curious to me because I feel like the working world has changed. And obviously, if you're working 100 hours a week consistently without a break, you're going to burn out. I don't care who you are. But, we've all been doing this for multiple decades. Doug, do you remember a time where we were working less hours than we're working today? Because I just want to check my biases here.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, Bobby, it depends on, I'd say, defining your work. I mean, most people that actually experience burnout. And I would actually almost paraphrase that as just being completely fed up, where you have reached that point where you just say, I can't go on anymore. And you've got to pace yourself in anything and everything that you do. And there's various ways that we can experience. I mean, there's so many different types of burnout. You've got emotional, you've got physical, you've got sleep deprivation, that can amount even something as simple as jet lag, going into a different time zone. I mean, we've all traveled extensively over those decades, and obviously, as we age, the recovery is not quite as simple as it maybe used to be. And I mean, Christ, I can remember many times when I've been around the world, and you get someplace and you arrive and you're expected to be
Mhm.
on, and they don't recognize the fact that you're 8 hours away from your time zone that you've been with, and your body just doesn't recover. Now that could be nutrition, it can be exercise or lack thereof, it can be any number of things, and of course age. And let's face it, I look in a mirror, I can see I'm not quite as young as I used to be. And but it's the expectations that one has compared to the expectations of who you're working for. So going back to your question of, you know, how are we working? I mean, you, Joe, myself, besides sharing many different things, the one thing that we definitely share is passion for what we do, for the messages that we try to communicate to our various audiences. And there comes a point, even and then, when we have a clear vision of what should be and where we're going, and the audience maybe just doesn't quite grasp it. And you do get kind of, and I must admit, sometimes you get fed up with it. They just don't see the forest for the trees. But that's perception. We forget that we all are individuals. We've got different backstories and everything else. And I think that people are less tolerant than they used to be of things. But I mean, when I was working as a strictly commissioned salesperson and I had my 8 hours a day, I didn't think anything of working an extra couple of hours just to get the job done. Besides the fact that I'd make more money if I did that extra time. But then there was the old axiom of, why work hard, work smart. Um, and that's it. But define, do you have a work week? Is it 40 hours? Is it 37 and a half? I'm reminded one of my old friends and clients from Sweden, uh, he would be working, like you said, 100 hours a week. And he used to say, well, I only work 40 hours a week. The other 60 hours are my hobby.
Mm.
It's what he enjoyed. And it was his passion for what he was doing that kept him going.
Great.
So I mean, and I would say it is pacing oneself. I mean, we've all been engaged with either clients or been in conferences or whatever, where you're just in meeting after meeting after meeting. And I'm my own personal opinion that any meeting that's more than an hour without a break is a waste of time because you lose focus.
Great.
You get burnt out on the thing, and you need to get up, stretch your legs, pee break, hydration, any number of things, which allows one to recover. And I think that when you say what's the solution, it is some type of mental or psychological recovery that one needs to do to overcome that feeling of being burnt out. But, can one get burned out on being burned out? Absolutely. And that normally results in things like nervous breakdowns, just making bad decisions, where if you had your right focal point, you never would have made that decision. And it's because you made that decision when you were burnt out.
There's so many there's so many things there. Um, and I'm not saying, I just disclaimer, I'm not arguing the point about whether working more hours or less hours is advantageous or not. There is something to be said for working smarter, not harder. But a boss I had very many years ago said, I don't really care how many hours you work. Are you producing the outcomes that we
Yes.
need to produce? But I just have to say, I'm sure there is a point in someone's career, especially in our industry, where they worked a 40-hour week, they were super effective, and they were driving their organization and their people in the direction they wanted to go. But at the moment, I draw a blank because for me, it was 80-hour work weeks. And when you're talking about being on a plane, like I traveled so much, I never got jet lag. I had jet advanced. So it's like
So you
you're
arrived before you arrived? That's amazing, Bobby.
Back
pretty
in your
much.
time travel.
Yeah.
Well, you
Scotty,
did.
beam me up.
You did. Like, how many times did you like have I like left Australia at 1 p.m. in the afternoon to fly in for an event on the West Coast here in the States, and I landed at 1 p.m. So that flight took me 30 seconds, technically. So or you travel back in time. So yeah, you literally were time traveling, and that is so hard on the body. Yet, even when everybody else was doing that, you did not hear about burnout with anywhere near the consistency and frequency that you're hearing about it today. So if you take that one variable, how many hours you're working and how hard you're working, it's a contributing factor, but that can't be it. There are things that have changed in our society and our working world today that I think are exacerbating the effects of burnout. One, you talked about it, Joe, autonomy. The more I feel that I am making my decisions, I'm taking actions for my intrinsic reasons, the less burnout I'm going to experience, the more inoculated I am from the deleterious effects of chronic stress, the more connected I am to people. And yes, that does mean face to face. I don't want to get into a debate about virtual versus in person. I'm a moderate in all things. Well, not in all things.
Yeah,
Like I take,
really.
well, actually, I do take moderation in moderation. So yeah, probably I'm a moderate in all things, but I think there's a balance. But we also had very strong, tight relationships and friendships within the working world, which also inoculates us from the adverse effects of stress. And there was also meaning. Like I just remember so many teams that had this overarching sense of shared purpose. This is not only what we're looking to do, but this is why. Like, but even like this is very stupid, and it might be irrelevant to just about everybody. Sorry, but I was in my gym downstairs in my building the other day, and I'm just on this piece of equipment, and I look at the logo, Free Motion, and all of a sudden I just went back in time to when Do you remember when Free Motion was Ground Zero? But then
Of course.
9/11 happened, and they're
Yeah.
like, maybe Ground Zero isn't the best name for this. This is great because I think Free Motion is a much better name anyway. But I remember like Roy Simonson, the beginning of that, and how much purpose and excitement there was around reimagining something like equipment in a gym. Like everything had this holy grail element. And I think today, where things are so unpredictable and the world can literally, we used to say it as an analogy, but the world could literally change in a week today. If people feel like they have less and less control, they have more and more input of messages from social media, they have so much more disconnection and fragmentization between them and other people. I think all of these things are adding to why we're seeing this explosion in burnout today.
I think it's also a generational thing. The work ethic that we had, years ago was completely different. And you look at the younger generation now, I mean, they have never not had the internet. They've never had, I mean, you're saying about things can change in a week. I mean, look at what's going on in the States right now. It changes by the hour, with all the different things that are coming at you. And I think it is a little bit of almost information overload,
Mhm.
where you're attempting to absorb. I mean, I remember training way back when I was just talking about marketing and advertising. The average human is exposed to 60,000 impressions in a matter of minutes, just driving down the road, and the ads and the
This is
colors and the everything, and it's coming at you. And then you sit there and you're sitting in front of a computer for hours on end. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, when I'm sitting here working, quite often I'll just have the news on in the background, just to see what's keeping up with what's going on in the world, how it's going to impact whatever it is that I'm doing. And just today watching, or yesterday watching what's been going on in Davos, and then with the other issues in the States with ICE and other things. And then it's just, how can you cope with all of that information coming at you? And it does get to a point in time where you just say, I've got to decompress.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the main reasons recovery is coming on as strong as it is, not just in the gym, but mentally, where you need to step away and enjoy whatever hobbies or other things you got outside of work.
Can I jump in there for a minute?
Sure.
Because I think some of the things that you've said are really good, and I wanted you just to go back slightly, because I think what you said about passion and us all having a passion here changes our outlook already on work.
It gives you energy too.
It gives us energy. But one of the key things about burnout, according to the World Health Organization, is it is associated to the workplace. And I think that that's a really important thing to clarify for anyone listening, because we can't do anything about a toxic relationship, a tragedy at home. All of these things can also impact our well-being. But what we're really talking about is our state in a work environment. And you mentioned Sweden, and interestingly, they are the only place where it is actually a medical condition. But what is interesting about that is it doesn't mean that these aren't real symptoms. Hell no. But what it means is, if left unchecked and unsupported, and that leads to depression, or it leads to severe anxiety, self-harming, any of those things, it's connected to the workplace. So that is on your environment if you are a club owner, operator, those sorts of things. So that's really, really important. And I mean, I also want to make sure that we don't go, oh, in our wonderful world, because in our experience and our expectations, that's all been governed and changed by our environment. And I remember going back probably 27 years. Most of the group exercise trainers did it because they loved it. I mean, they're still getting paid exactly the same money. So I would say they still love it because there's been no pay rise. But there was this one girl, Lisa, and she was an absolute legend, the type of trainer that people were queuing, for days before she was about to teach. And then she just never turned up again. Because for her, she was doing something that she absolutely loved, that she was passionate about. But it was overkill. And like you said, Doug, she just needed to decompress. And it happens quite a lot within the gym industry. Personal trainers, group exercise instructors, your lead people within the team. And like you said, Bobby, sometimes they suddenly come in, they're a bit more short-tempered, or they make mistakes, mess up on their rota, forget a client, those sorts of things. Or they just never come back.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing here, the pattern is like you said, it's the conditions of the working environment. One, all aspects of life that are happening so fast, and that in a lot of people stir up a significant amount of anxiety. It's all collapsed in together. There's not the segmentation of, okay, I'm going to the office, or now I'm home. I mean, those things always overlapped, but not to the degree they do today. And, Doug was saying something earlier that I appreciate. I think every generation says, these kids today, right? It's like the work ethic of these kids. Now, is it true that there are some like Gen Z people out there that do not have the same work ethic we might perceive that we had? Yeah, but they were around in our day as well. I think we remember them. We can even remember their names clearly. But there are also people in Gen Z that are absolute beasts. So I was, just talking to people in my organization yesterday, and there's like these people in their early 20s that are outright weapons. They are legends and they work so hard and they work so many hours a day. And one person said to me, oh, I love this comment from her. She said, you've asked us a lot of really great questions in this meeting today. The one question you did not ask that you should have asked is, what is the most meaningful impact I want to make? I was like, yeah, thanks. That is a great question. And she went on to say that for her, it's doing her tours. And I don't mean a health club tour. She tours a clinic. And she said, when I can pull together the right combination of services that I know 6 months from now will make a difference in this person who does not even know me yet, for me, that is most meaningful. Here's the difference though. 10 years ago, it would have been, okay, we're going to do an all night training, or we're going to come in here on the weekend and we are going to drill down on the skills that elevate all of us to be able to master this tour, to transfer the highest level of value to the person walking through the front door. And people would have felt amazing about that. Like when I show up to work, I know I am particularly good at something. As a matter of fact, I'm not just good, I am peerlessly talented in what I do because we work on that skill development. Today, it's like we'll send that person to do 6 more hours of emails. But when it comes to the training and development, to give her the skill sets to really live immersed in the thing that she says is not only most important to her, but our whole business depends on. It's like, okay, we'll do that. We'll spend like 10 minutes at our next meeting on that. And it's just we do not have this level of immersion in taking your passion, developing the skills that translate that passion to clear, specific, relevant outcomes. I think that is seriously part of the problem because, yeah, you know what? If you're swimming for 10 like in the pool all day, you're going to have to get out. You're going to have to do some recovery. You're going to have to dry off. But at some point, you're going to have to get back in the pool. And getting back in the pool requires one, getting wet. And if you're really good, it requires knowing how to swim. So we're going to have to give swim lessons at some point, is what I'm trying to say here.
Well, I'm just treading water, so there you go. I mean, at the end of the day, Bobby,
No,
what you're looking at, and you hit a few points there in particular, about expectations, but also reward, recognition, and why are you actually doing whatever it is that you're doing? Are you doing it strictly for money? Are you doing it for the love of that? Are you looking to do it to make a difference in whatever it is that happens to be your profession? And it's also, there's so many other things to contribute. I mean, Joe, you were talking about the no pay rises and whatever. That's fine, but the other thing to consider is the overall economy. Inflation, and the money that you're making. If you're not getting that pay rise while everything else is going up around you, it's very, very easy to become disillusioned, frustrated. And is that actually, is frustration a early manifestation of burning out?
Yeah, and lack of feeling of value as well.
Absolutely. One thing that's been going through my mind, and it's a thing, I was working in the very early days of my career with a club that was a client, and we had done this fantastic campaign, and we, the sales team, were just on it nonstop. And at the end of the night, we had achieved something, results that the club had never seen before. And we closed the club, and I took one of the salesmen out, who was great. And we went off, just had a beer, and congratulated ourselves on a job well done, we thought. And the next morning, he was sitting, anyway, gone back into the club, and the owner comes up to him and basically says, "So what have you got booked for today?" No, thank you for the exceptional job. No, nothing. And later that day, he pulled me aside. He goes, "Doug, I'm quitting. I just can't cope anymore." And for that, it was, he made enormous amounts of money, but it was that frustration, that that expectation that the owner had of him. He goes, "Man, you've been great. I've done everything I've done because of you. I can't work with this asshole anymore."
Yeah.
And it just gets to, everyone reaches their boiling point sooner or later in their life, whether it be with a relationship, whether it be with a job, whether it be with, any number of things, family, issues that, spring up where you just, I can't cope anymore.
Mm.
So what do? You distance yourself. Otherwise, you're going to just, have your own version of a breakdown. I mean,
Um,
is there a cure?
you know,
What can one do to overcome that feeling?
you are really pissing me off, Doug. Not you. I think you're lovely, but the things you're saying are so getting under my skin. A book I
Good.
talk about. Like I'm like I should be like a publicist because I talk about all my favorite books constantly and repetitively. Um, so I've been told. And one book I consistently go back to is through Gallup, Clifton and Hodder, their book, It's the Manager, where
Yep.
they present an enormous amount of research that 70% of the variance of all performance in any organization has to do with the frontline manager. And as important as management is, it is a leadership issue. And it's not like there's a lack of data to support like the how leadership drives performance in so many ways. But that story you're telling just irritates the shit out of me because we just go back. It seems like we go back and we hire the same nimrods that disenfranchise entire departments, produce like behaviors that destroy performance, and
Yeah.
it's never them, and we rehire those people, and what we do not recognize and celebrate and reward enough is that manager that sits down and says, listen, first of all, before we get into anything today, can I just highlight? And if you do this publicly, oh, and by the way, this isn't just a leadership initiative, this is a well being initiative. Like what I'm about to say, I'm going to make a bold claim. It's just as important as helping somebody with smoking cessation. And you publicly sit down and you say, Doug, here's what you did yesterday. Here's the result that you produced. Here's the behaviors that we observed. So it's reproducible and specific. And here's the impact it's had on everybody sitting in this room. And I just want to say, like, thank you. And as someone who's privileged to lead this team, I am grateful that I have someone like you on it. Like that right there will do more to drive performance and commitment and cohesion and fight burnout than anything else. What you're also doing, Michael McCullough and Robert Emmons have done a ton of quality research in the neurobiology of gratitude. And a lot of times when we think of gratitude, we think about sitting down and writing a gratitude journal every night before we go to bed. And the research says that that is efficacious. That absolutely does work. That will make your life better. But the most profound neurobiological impact of gratitude is the person receiving gratitude publicly for a specific course of action. So the person receiving gratitude, as well as the person giving it, the leader on that team, their level of well being is elevated and their stress hormone levels are mitigated in those moments. And when you do stuff like that, you are also modeling for everyone else on the team what pro-social behavior and reward looks like so they can go out and do that and duplicate it. And the fact that we have that decreasing, because I've been in meetings where you've got rock stars in the room
Yep.
and they've produced so much over the past month. And a friend of ours, Richard Boyd, would be in the
Yep.
room.
Boydie.
He's starting the meeting by just going around the room, and this isn't like a meeting protocol. This is just Boydie, and he's going, "Holy shit! The things that you guys have done, like over the past week," and he's acknowledging everyone. And some muppet in the room will go, "Oh yeah, that's great. Now let's get back down to business." Wait, this is the business.
This is the business. Absolutely. I
Yes,
And
the
mean,
also
spreadsheets matter, but this is the business.
if
with
you're
with
gonna, yeah, get Bob.
I was just going to say, within that as well, you've got that ability to be able to highlight when somebody's done something well, but also highlight the effort they've put in, because we can very, very easily praise the reward, the outcome. And if we do that, we're not going to invest in a growth mindset within our team. So if we can take that step back and say, with your example, Doug, all the work that you did prior to that, I don't really care that you got
Yep.
that deal. It was the fact that you were there at 10 o'clock at night on your time. And that's amazing, because it's that makes somebody else think, do you know what? I can take that risk
The
because
duplicatable behaviors.
exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And then, and you brought that in earlier as well, that intrinsic inspiration to do something, and because that's inspiring. Oh, somebody else did this, they put in all that effort, whether it was successful or not. And it also reminded me, I kid you not, imagine the scenario. It's Saturday morning outside the gym. The gym is locked because whoever was supposed to open up isn't there. Maybe they were on the way to burnout, got forgetful. I don't know. But as you can imagine, Saturday morning, hundreds of members are arriving. There's staff trying to phone up to get the keys. Meanwhile, it's the time for the actual class to start. And the instructor goes, do you know what? We've got enough room here. Put your bags to the side. Let's go. Those of you that are good at singing, I want you to give me a little bit of a rat-a-ta-ta. Got them doing a circuit class afterwards
In the street.
in the street, in the car park.
Love
That
it.
trainer was me.
It figures.
Yeah, it was me. Do you think I got a thank you?
No.
I
Well,
mean, that was something that I took away and thought, I am never going to lead my team like that. Because it didn't need much, but if someone said, you saved our ass, you got everybody moving, we were able to open the doors, no members complained. That's it.
yeah. Bobby, if you're going to name drop on the books, I'll go back even further to Ken Blanchard and the 1 Minute Manager. I mean, every single club practically that I've worked with over the last 4 decades, I've made the sales manager, read that bloody book. 1 minute praisings, 1 minute reprimands, and 1 minute goal setting. And that goal setting defines your expectations, which gives you that feeling of accomplishment and self-worth when you do accomplish it. But also the praisings is that, to the high five, the pat on the back, although you can't touch people anymore. And then also the 1 minute reprimands. And it isn't where you just say, you did wrong. You just let them define what they did wrong and then ask, well, what should we have done differently? What do you think you should have done? Let them come up with the solution, which Bobby gives them what you said, the definable of, learning from your mistakes. And that has served me well in achieving the results that sales makers had over all those clubs and all those years. Look, we're all going to make mistakes and you're going to learn by them. But you have to have that praising recognition. And I've done it and I've gone out of my way every single time. I even did that, shall we say, when somebody joined the club. Of every sale I've made for 40 plus years, when I've done and the customer says yes, I reach out, I shake their hand, and I say, welcome to the club, reinforcing their decision of being the positive and the right decision. And, the countless salespeople that I've trained and hired and worked with, it wasn't because of me, it was because of them. And letting them know that makes all the difference in the world. That's how you can really achieve the impossible in any career. And that frustrated salesperson went on to get into automobile sales. He called me 2 years later and said, Doug, I'm still using what you taught me. By the way, I'm buying my own dealership now.
That's
You know,
wow. That's amazing. Like, how great is that to hear?
oh, are you kidding?
Somebody,
That was my gratification, man. That was my, and I get that occasionally. I mean, there's somebody, Joe, you probably know the person, but I won't mention the names. Here in the UK, when I first came over, there was somebody that has been the managing director of two major chains or equipment companies, is now working with a major distributor. And I ran into him somewhere, and we were just talking. He goes, "I'm in this industry still because of you." I said, "What?" He goes, "You were giving a lecture, and I looked around, and I had accepted a job in a different, career." And he goes, "What am I, crazy? Look at the energy here. Look at what's going on." And he goes, and every once in a blue moon, I will get that, and I'll be like, "I'm still here because of you, man. That's why I do what I do, or did what I did. The
Do
right
I do?
reasons."
I still see that, and it comes back down to that passion. Still see that in you, whenever you're in a room. And I think, Bobby, you're the same. As soon as you start talking about what you love, that passion.
Well, now that we've got this mutual admiration society, all three of us, you light up the room, my dear, when you enter.
Aw.
This
Your aura
is,
and energy exudes from every pore.
I think a really good practice, and I do this. I'm one of those, I want to talk to your manager, but not for
Oh,
the
yeah.
reasons you think. Very, very different reason. If I am receiving an experience that
Yep.
is less than satisfactory and I look around and it's consistent, I'm not going to mention it to the manager. Here's when I say I really want to talk to the manager. John Hardy said something that really landed with me a while ago. He said, people think you get up in front of the room and you just completely bomb. So I'm now a comedian, so that's something that I'm pretty familiar with, especially on those open mic nights. They are brutal. The shows are way more forgiving. But man, and you get up in front of a room and you give the worst presentation in front of a boardroom at a conference, and you think, wow, that's the worst thing that can happen. No, it's not nearly the worst thing that can happen. It's your interpretation that makes it so. Odds are you're going to learn from that and get better. The worst thing that can happen is you get up and you give the best presentation. It is your best day ever. You have crushed it, and you have absolutely no idea why. So whenever I get an experience like someone like Joe, who's going to do that Group X class out in the car park, um, I pay attention. And if there are multiple people on that team that have that attitude, they have that level of engagement, I want to talk to the manager straight away. Because if you have one person on your team like that, it's probably has a lot to do with them. If most people or everybody on your team is like that, that's leadership in action. And I want to be able to say, excuse me, this is exactly what. So people are going to hate me for this. There's a chain pub, and I'm not a major fan of chain pubs, but this one chain pub, you've been there with me many times, Joe, Yard House, on the West Coast. Most of your experiences there are above and beyond positive at most locations, not all of them. And I regularly have pulled the manager over and said, "Do you know why I come here so much?" And it's not your beer selection. It's because this is how I am treated. Whenever there's a problem, this is how your team responds. So they know, oh, okay, people notice. Let me double down on this. Let me make this a duplicatable experience. And I think managers always hear when something goes wrong. And my cynicism is if everybody on your team, like you have to question their mental health. I think it's the leader in some way, shape, or form. But if you're witnessing something that is stellar, that leader needs to know.
And it is, Bobby. It is training. It is recognition. And, yeah, most times the manager gets called when there's problems. And they, just like us, respond to the affirmations. I was working in Norway years ago, and my favorite hotel in Northern Europe is called Holmenkollen Park. It's in Oslo, and this is where the United Nations and where all the political people, beautiful, beautiful property. And I was staying there, and I got to know the staff. And I always, when I go into a place traveling, I make a point of interacting with, we'll say, the little people, because those are the people that count. Those that make the experience, that make you feel welcome. I believe that's why they call it hospitality, but I'm not sure. And I stayed there, and then one night I went there, and I walk in late, and I was tired, long flight, snowbound, and one of the staff, He says, what are you doing here? So, well, I came to go to bed. He goes, well, we're fully booked. I said, what? He goes, you know, the hotel is fully booked. I said, well, I talked to, Joanne the other day. She, confirmed my room. He goes, no. He goes, the closest hotel is 45 minutes away. I'm like, oh, man. So Homey Colin Park was previously an old hotel that had been modernized and renovated and expanded over the years. And he goes, wait a minute. He goes away, comes back. He goes, look, he goes, I can put a roll away in a meeting room, but you've got to be out at 9 o'clock because there's a meeting in the meeting room and there's no shower or anything. The toilet's across the hall. So that's not a problem. I can get a shower in the club, up, that's fine. So what I didn't know was that I was the first person in 100 years to sleep in the old hotel. And I got another client and they were no longer willing to pay for that accommodation. So my last day there, I basically asked to see the general manager and he comes down and I said, listen, I just want to thank you for the experience. I've been staying here for the last 2 years. Your staff have been outstanding. I want to, thank you and congratulate you on having, the best property I've ever, stayed in. And I mentioned about this experience that I'd had. He goes, yeah, I heard about you. And he basically said, well, what are they, willing to pay? And I told him, he said, you stay here, I'll match that. And it was all because of the way I interacted with the people, but it was his training and reinforcement that made that experience something that I'll remember until I die. That's what we should all be striving for in all aspects of our careers, to make that difference.
Absolutely. And I could have this conversation for hours.
And I suspect we will in a couple of months. over a beer in the yard house. I got to experience that.
You do. But as we are wrapping up,
yeah,
let's capture a little bit of what we talked about. And yes, recovery is important, and taking a break, unplugging, avoiding distractions, focus, all of those things. But I think the main themes that we covered today for leadership, and my team yesterday, I'm actually very proud of these conversations I had with the people in my organization. So I keep bringing it up, and they talked about, well, leadership is a decision. It's not a title. We shouldn't be waiting to be anointed as leaders, and with the people around you, not just what results are you trying to produce, but why. And not just why for the organization. Why does it matter to the individual, so that they are invited to take ownership for the results and the outcome? Kind of like you took ownership of the situation, moving what could have been a very disappointing experience into a novel one out in the car park. And that's number one. Two, what are the behaviors that, when consistently employed, brings about that outcome so you can live your purpose through work? What are the skill sets that reinforce those behaviors and elevate the value and the sustainability of them? And three, recognition. When something happens that is aligned with what you ideally want to have happen, recognize it. Recognize it in yourself, recognize it in others, and recognize it publicly, so it becomes a model for
yes.
the organization.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, I think we should wrap this one up on that note. And Bobby, Joe, thank you for inviting me to join you today. It's been fun. And I look forward to seeing you, my friend, in a couple of months in your hometown. And Joe, thank you for everything you did on Monday with our international group. I've got the email, which I forwarded to you. They loved the experience that we gave them. And looks like we're invited to China now.
fantastic.
But, anyway, we'll share that experience with you later, Bobby.
And thank you both for your passion as well. And I think both of you shared something I took away is be kind, and that kindness to listen and give the tools that other people need is such a useful skill as a leader. And
absolutely. Okay, guys, you be
Thank
well.
you.
Love you both. Take care.
Love you too.
See you somewhere down the road. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye.